Hi, this is Zena Harris.
And I'm Mark Rabin.
Welcome to the tie-in.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the tie-in. Today, we're speaking with Hans Dayal, a production manager extraordinaire for major studios such as Netflix, Disney, Warner Bros., Universal, and more. And he's been working on multiple sustainability and innovation fronts over the years on really big shows. So looking forward to diving in and hearing all about his innovative, thoughtful ways.
Yeah, I think this will be a great conversation. Let's go.
All right, we're here today with Hans Dayal, and Hans is a local fixture in the Vancouver film production scene. And I actually think that you're one of the first people I ever met in film. I think that
I
day we
think
went
that's
for
right.
lunch.
We
Yeah.
went for lunch, and I remember fondly trying to get our lighting guy to put your batteries to work, the test ones, and I think we did, right? On
Yeah.
We were on a movie called Death Note for Netflix, and we put your batteries to work on a rooftop on Seymour Street, if I remember correctly, and the guys were blown away. And I think that might have been the first time a portable electric battery was used to light lights without a generator in Vancouver. Could
Yeah,
very
that
well,
was the beginning. And then we
yeah.
joined, and then we sponsored Crazy Eights, and that kind of blew the doors open.
Yeah, great. So great. I mean, I'm so pleased and proud of all that you both do so much. It's really quite incredible scene. And then we go to places all over the world and talk to people from all over the world. I got approached by someone from Africa to talk about this stuff, and they were surprised at how far we are. Although, in Africa they do a lot of, they're very sustainable there, just by, I think, by nature and by cultural, whatever, that they've already been doing it for a long time. So they're right in there. But anyways, yeah. Now your batteries are everywhere.
I
Yeah.
know it's great to see. And hi, Hans.
Hi, Zena.
No, I feel like you and I have come across each other in various capacities throughout the years. So just really appreciate how you have been leaning in to sustainability and I'm just curious to kick us off, like, how did this come to be for you? What sparked your awareness in, well, I guess in film and TV and then in the sustainability space?
Yeah, I mean, film and TV was the thing that I fell into years ago, 30 years ago now, just coming out of university and not really feeling attached to my science roots, my science background, because that's where I came from, the sciences. And so I started working and worked away. And then probably in the late 90s, early 2000s, when I was just starting out full time, really, we started doing a lot of recycling. And I was watching the waste and it bothered me. And I would always be the one that would steal, like, at the time was film. So we'd steal the film bits and give it to the film students and things like that. And we had a huge recycling program on one of the bigger features that I did, where we ended up, I think the PA that we assigned to it ended up buying a television with all the money that he earned from taking the recycling. And we just gave it to him, right? Because nobody was doing it. So there was no, this is pre-Kelsey, this is pre all the recycling programs that we now have. And so that's what we would do is we would get a PA and we would assign them the task of sorting it and bagging it and taking it. And there's a couple of PAs that love doing it, and they would end up keeping the money. And it was a great way to just start the whole mindset of just not wasting and just throwing things out and, on the set. And so that's really where it started for me. I was like, what else can we not waste? What else can we not throw out? And then over time, it became about how can I actually try things out? Because the science part of me still is there, lurks, and I just want to experiment and try new things. And I never want to be, frankly, I never want to be I don't want to be attached to anything. I don't want to be attached to any technique or any strategy for a show and say this is the way we're going to be sustainable. I just want to keep trying new things and doing different things because that's the great beauty of a project like a show. It's a petri dish and it can reinvent. You got new people, new circumstances, and you can just keep experimenting in different ways. So That's the thing that's the selfish maybe glee that I get out of doing it because I can try something new. But the larger thing is how do we make this business? I want to do a show and be carbon neutral. That's my goal. That's my dying goal. And so that's what I'm rooting for and orienting myself to.
Yeah,
We're not far from that. I mean,
I know. I don't think so either.
It's happening, man. It's yeah,
Yeah.
and I think you guys are completely a part of the movement and leading it. And so when I can try something out and make a suggestion or push something in a direction, I mean that's what I can do by being someone that's on the floor and doing things in production, right?
Hmm.
And you need bigger thinking to find the little things that cater to the bigger thinking, and then we can go and try them out and see if they work. I
Yeah,
think.
I mean, part of this interview today is to, go into and dive into some of those awesome solutions. But to start, maybe give us a little bit of a picture of some of the roadblocks first that sort of have presented themselves, because that's something that comes up quite a bit too.
Yeah, I mean, their obstacles are everything, right? The biggest obstacle is just mindset. It's people that are, well, this is like I said, this is the way we do it. This is how we're
Mhm.
going to continue to do it. And if you have that mindset, then half the battle is lost. It's changing that mindset is the biggest challenge, I think, globally. All the different techniques that you can try to instill in people, if they don't have that openness to trying something new, you're sunk. And so, where I've found the most success is finding people where they're at and finding the places where they're the most sort of vulnerable
Yeah.
in terms of where they're interested in making a change for themselves. And if you can find that, then you start to make headway, right? Like a couple of shows ago, we started using these recyclable dishes, like stainless steel dishes
Mhm.
for our food service, and the people they were not they were it was a battle between that and the compostable clamshells and compostable dishes. But the minute I brought something that was harder and firmer, I mean, one of the complaints about compostable dishes is they're flimsy.
Yeah.
And we brought in these stainless steel dishes, and immediately, like I would say to people who would say, "Well, it's better than the flimsy dishes," and I'd say that's what you got to tell everybody. And they became ambassadors of the stainless steel because they were like, "Look, you get to eat out of kind of real, plates and dishes and bowls." So it was finding that thing that they were open to for whatever reason, and then just marching in there with something and getting them to buy in.
Hmm. I mean, I'm curious, because I just you have such a great vantage point of, production,
Yeah.
being a production manager and kind of seeing the whole thing and talking with, the entire crew and everyone. Um, I'm curious, like, how you approach the new ideas, the innovative things that you want to do, or maybe that somebody brings to you, and you have to figure out a way to now talk to people and suss out, is this, are we going to do it or not? I mean, how do you do that?
I think it's it's a lot of conversation.
Mhm.
I mean, it's endless, right? That's the dialogue that you're always having to try and eke out what it is that people, where they're open, where that sliver is, where that door is slightly cracked or ajar, that you can slam open and say, "Hey, this is what we're going to try." And so, I mean, it depends on the department. It depends on the where people are at. I mean, I'm doing a show in Alberta right now. I mean, it's an oil and gas heavy mindset here, right? They are very, very concerned about that, and the drivers here are very concerned about we don't want to impact our province's business, major business. So now what do I do?
Yeah.
Because
Mhm.
I'm trying to like reduce fuel and reduce consumption, and folks here, the distances are huge to travel, and they like burning the fuel. They want to. They think it's part of their kind of like national, provincial responsibility, whatever it
Drink it
is.
for breakfast.
Yeah, for sure. Right. And so what I said to them was, why don't we just try the swap? And we got the renewable diesel going.
Mm.
And at first they were very resistant because they thought of it as biodiesel and they thought it was different. And the experiments that they had run with that type of diesel was different. And that's still what they thought it was. And once we got going and explained to them it's a totally different product, and that Petro-Canada and Suncor and all these big oil companies that are based out of here are actually pushing this product Well, the adoption, it was almost 100% across the board. They realized it was something they owned, they had ownership of it, and they adopted it. And it's not something that's being extracted from the earth, and it's something but it's coming from the companies that are employing them or their families in the larger community. So they jumped right on it. And once we had that engagement, it was almost 100%. So I don't
Well,
know if that
that
answers the question.
Yeah,
do,
yeah.
and do you see though that trend? Will they tend to bring it to their next show? Because I mean, that's you mentioned it's like they're like it's a micro, it's like petri dish. It's there in 6 months. It's gone, and then are you seeing some of these things carry over?
Well, I've seen a lot of it carry over in Vancouver because we started, like, we did a renewable diesel show 2 years ago, and now it's hitting, and everybody's figured out that, oh, you can do it once and it's reproducible and there's a format to it. We've tried the stainless steel dishes as well. It's something that's been reproducible. So I do think that people want to try again. To your point, to your earlier question about, where do we run into roadblocks or obstacles? Now, if you're switching from studio to studio, and if your production executives aren't on board or aren't
Mhm.
engaged in the conversation, then you have to reinvent the wheel with them. It's great and helpful to have the sustainability reps from the major studios, but not all the shows have that or have a person like that are part of our greater conversation. Like we have the SPA, and we have all those representations from Netflix and Warner Brothers and Disney there, so that they're kind of carrying the mission from show to show for us. But I do think that it's harder to translate it when the production people aren't savvy, and that's maybe a step in the direction we need to go as production people, to try and really educate our production executives. The sustainability people are all on board, and there's going to be the actors, and there might be a
Mhm.
showrunner here and there that's
Yep.
really on board, but you need the people that are doing the granular financing and budgeting and things like that to really understand that, oh, there's a savings, there's an economy here, there's lots of little places where there's something that's happening that you're like, oh, if you can capture that and make the case for it, then they sort of buy in. I'll give you a great example. Your batteries, for example,
Yep.
portable electric batteries. We would have riggers cabling for days. If we were doing big sets, we would have them cabling for days, hours to get the cable from the vendor into the truck, over to the location, laid out properly, safely, and then once we shoot the scene,
Permitted to the
permitted,
generator.
right?
The generator's
Exactly.
parked down the street.
That's right. And it's crossing, like,
Yeah.
six people's properties. So you're doing buyouts on all this stuff. Well, now I have a 20K battery. I pull it up to where we're lighting. It's
Hmm.
parked right there. It's no noise, no emissions. And we have one run of cable that goes up to the rooftop of the building, say, for example, and it's done. And so we
Yeah.
just saved ourselves all that labor, all that hauling, all that cable. And if we could put that on one sheet and show it to a production executive and say, every time we run a battery, this is how much you save. That's the ticket. That's the thing that makes them think, oh, I get it now. It may seem like we're paying a little premium to have the battery, but the savings are tenfold, cumulatively.
Hmm. And have
Amazing.
over the years, as you've been, maybe using more batteries and whatnot, trying different things, have you seen the conversations with the production execs evolve?
Yeah, I have actually, because probably I would say 5 or 6 years ago, like when I say, for example, when we started on Virgin River, even, which is a great show that showcases how far a show can go over 5 or 6 seasons. I brought in people to talk about recycling, to talk about fuel, and the Jenny op there didn't understand what I was talking about. And cut to season two, we brought in the UPS and tried it because it was the first run at it, and we brought a couple of batteries in. And now, I left the show after season two. I hear what now they've ran entire weeks and months without burning any fuel,
Amazing.
Hmm.
and which is monumental, right?
Hmm.
So that's buy-in from the production executives. I mean, Netflix is very progressive, so they're very interested in doing that. But also, the producers, like, at first they were just looking at me and laughing and teasing me. I would get mad when they would photocopy. I would get mad when they would photocopy more than two or three scripts for a meeting and leave them in the boardroom for a production meeting or whatever. I would say all of this can be done digitally. Let's take this. We're not photocopying anymore. If someone asks for a photocopy, because you have people like that, then we'll allow it, and they can do it themselves. We're not going to, the office isn't going to do it, production's not going to do it. They'll have to do it themselves. Well, that's all gone now from that show. They don't do anything with paper. And if they do, I mean, it was one of the first shows too that used the rice paper. So it was just like we were doing things all the time, and as we showed that we could do them and it was efficient, producers, production executives, they got on board and it evolved. And I think that happens slower with certain generation of executives, but I think it's happening pretty quickly now. And I think that, like I said, you all are critical to the movement of getting the conversation going at a really high level, which is where we need them to be engaged. They need to get the
Hmm.
pressure from their bosses and the studio heads and all these sort of different managers, I guess.
Yeah.
Administ
Yeah, the way you're talking about it confirms some survey data that we have. We've had an open survey out to the film and TV industry, and really entertainment in general, also including music and sports, to ask, like, one of the questions is something like, who do you think needs training the most? And there are various levels of positions, all, crew all the way up to execs and whatnot. And so far, what we're finding is the execs seem to like that's people are saying we need the execs, we need the management to have
yeah,
more training, right, on this. So I think that's really interesting and kind of jives with what you're talking about as well.
yeah. Just making one sheet business cases, if I could spend my time and someone would pay me to do this, and just plugging in very simple infographics and saying, look, the labor for a rigger to lay this cable over 3 days, the cost of transportation, the cost of fuel, the cost of actually buying out the permit and the location fees or whatever it is versus renting this battery. And you just put that chart together, and every time you talk about a battery, that thing pops out. You talk about uh, whether it's renewable diesel or it's another alternative fuel source. You say, well, this is what real fuel costs. This is what we're talking about. Yes, there's a slight difference, but then you say, look at the changes that we can make. I mean, for me, the business case for renewable diesel was that we could install tanks right on our property. We put a tank on our property. So now I'm not sending a driver or a fuel truck driver to go and fill up a fuel truck at a gas station. We're doing it and it's delivered to us on the site that we're at. And so you're taking 2 trips or 3 trips of a truck away from the equation. And that's once a day. So, over time that starts to become something. And you can make the argument and say, now I don't even actually need that driver, or I don't need an additional fuel truck on a larger show. I mean, I know this is super granular, but these are the kinds of things that you can show and say, look, we've authoritatively looked at this and really
Yeah.
thought this through, and here's the case for it.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's all about the hard numbers, but also there's that you mentioned that mindset, the nudging social and sustainable behaviors, right? And no one's going to want to be left behind. And also I'm sure there's a certain level of attrition that's happening naturally as well in the industry. So we're starting to see the new generations coming
Yeah.
in, and hopefully they'll start doing it. I mean, we'd love to catch people even at the film school level. We're still working on that because that's really where you could start to make entire productions without even a generator at this point, right? and
Yeah. Yeah.
and we're seeing that in the UK and Europe, and you're saying that you guys are starting to have entire weeks with limited to no generators. But what are you seeing about the cast and crew trailers and honey wagons? I know you've had a special interest in terms of the sort of solar powered for a lot of this
Yeah.
equipment. It's been a bit slower go, of course, maybe especially in northern climates. But I mean, what are your takes on the circus and all of the
Well,
ancillary equipment?
yeah, I mean, I think that's a good question. I think that the equipment that we use to support, like we're a portable, caravan of our vehicles. That whole infrastructure that we take tote around, I would love to find a way to make those really efficient and energy efficient and all that. So that has been a bit of a question mark or question that I've had of, like, how do we microgrid this, for example? Do we build trailers that have batteries in them and charge them, or hybridize and use a generator, charge them up? Like, how can we get all that stuff going? Obviously, that takes a lot of money and capital to try that. One of the things we did on this show, which was probably our big experiment on the show that I'm doing right now, was we got this big battery that they use out in the oil fields, in the oil patch,
Mm.
a 1 megawatt battery, and it's
Wow.
hot with a generator.
In a shipping container?
It's bigger than a shipping container.
Okay.
It's a towable giant battery.
Nice.
And we found this thing through finning, and we brought
Mm.
it to our circus, our base camp. So we built a backlot. It's almost a $10 million backlot. It's a very big backlot, Western town
In Alberta.
in
Got it.
Alberta.
Yeah.
And we found this technology. One of the guys that was working in sustainability here found it and brought this machine in, and we ran our circus on it, and it replaced 5 generators. And so this thing would
There you
run
go.
basically a town of, we had, 200 and something crew, 250 crew every day. And then we would have about 150 to 200 extras regularly, every other day or whatever day we were there. And so there's 500 people on the site with horses, with like
Got it.
multiple horses, like 60 horses and cowboys and trucks and trailers. And this battery would run for 18 hours a day as a battery, and then it
Wow.
would charge for six
Yeah.
hours a day. And that's how we basically made this work. And we took away all the generators that were running the base camp. And, that's how we did it. And we used renewable diesel in the generator that was powering this. So,
Woo!
yeah.
That's
So
how it's done.
I don't know what the measurements are yet. We're still trying to do all the calculations, but my sustainability guy team said we think we saved enough carbon that it's like the equivalent of what we would consume on a feature film, which is a ton of carbon.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
So I'm really,
And the cost of diesel and
that's right.
everything. It's
Yeah.
wiring up,
Yeah.
cabling, 5 generators. I mean, it's just like goes on and on.
Goes on and on. So that was something that we're trying. We don't have the data yet. We haven't put it all together, but just watching it unfold and watching people get excited about this whole thing uh, made me think, now if I can find a way to do this in smaller ways and
Mhm.
like I said, the microgrid version of this, I think that this is something that we can tote and figure out. And part of why I think we want to do it is because what I want to do with it is because I know that in places where it's hot, you have a lot of air conditioning. Air conditioning is a thing that kind of chews up energy more than anything else in a
Yeah.
circuit or in a base
Unless
camp.
you've got solar panels that are powering
Right.
the air conditioner.
Yeah. So here, for example, we haven't tried a solar experiment in Alberta, but I think it would actually work. In BC, we tried some solar stuff, and it wasn't really sustaining us. Like, we needed a lot of panels.
Mhm.
So I think that that's where that it also, like, again, going to go back to your bigger question, you tailor your strategy to where you are, to what the circumstance is, to the type of production it is, to the type of executives you have. I did not, if I did not have Netflix as a partner, like full tilt financial partner in trying this, we
Mhm.
would not have succeeded in doing this. And I'm not even sure I'm allowed to talk about how much they helped, but we had huge financial support for them to try this out. And that's the only reason we were able to do it. So if I didn't have that, if I was on a show that didn't have that kind of a commitment to reducing emissions, we wouldn't be able to try this experiment. It would not work. I would have been
Yeah.
able to do it on a much smaller scale because I can make the business case for it. But now that I've done it on such a large scale, I think that the data will be there for Netflix, and they'll be able to go and
Yeah.
try this in other jurisdictions and
Yeah.
places. And they can tailor their strategy. Lana, like, they'll be able to use the solar much easier than we can in
Yeah.
BC, for example.
Hmm.
Yeah, you've got a hybrid microgrid or in some way. I mean, I
Yeah.
think you're going to start to see this more and more, especially if you're at a back lot or somewhere where you can have the space for I'm assuming it's a 40, 53 foot type
Yeah.
setup, right?
Right. Yeah.
I mean, that's oil field's been doing this kind of stuff forever.
And that's where that's where we
Yeah.
got this whole notion of it. The whole idea came from the oil patch. So again, it's another instance where you find people where they're at. And I was like, what if we could take something from the economy that already exists here and
Mhm.
repurpose it for something that's, film.
Yeah.
I love it. Love it.
I know. It's interesting because, I feel like sometimes we are in a bit of a bubble, a film bubble, like, if we haven't thought of it, then it must not exist
Mhm.
kind of thing. And it's really interesting to hear you say that, you're looking to other industries, looking to the local ecosystem and seeing what's available because there are lots of interesting things happening out there in other industries. And it's a bit ironic, but really cool to hear you say that the oil industry is providing solutions for you to decarbonize in this
100%.
battery scenario.
I would say that there is people in that world at a senior level, or in a very responsible place in the industry, they're interested in this. They
Mhm.
want to see this. And if we can, if I've said it to the folks here because the film commission in Calgary is run by the economic commission or economic advisory. And so I said to them, I said, if you get other partners involved in this, you're all building your industry. You're all building the film and television industry by using projects as petri dishes. And they're very excited by it. So I do think that we have to see beyond our business. We are a business of, we're a collective of all sorts of trades and technical things and all that. Anyways, we have transport, we have electricians, we have engineers, we have people that are coming from all walks of life into our field. And I think we should take advantage of it. That's part of the creativity of what we do, I think, is solve problems in a very collective way, if, for lack of a better word.
Yeah, I mean, I'm assuming though part of that is that by nature though the industry has been traditionally inefficient, right? I mean, it sounds like
Yeah.
you go build something three times because someone just said, "Oh, build that over there," and then you're sort of rebuilding it multiple times.
Yeah.
Um, are you still seeing that, or are things getting more efficient? And even on the, you mentioned Kelsey from Keep It Green, right?
Yeah.
It's just like that's been around for a long time. Are you seeing this just in Canada, or also you seeing it in spreading to other
Well,
jurisdictions?
yeah, I mean that's I think that it's getting more efficient. I think generally globally, I think it's getting more efficient. I think that the more shepherding we can do, uh we have a big production center, so it's a great way to see how policies and ideas like the tie-in program that we have through Creative BC and Real Green. I know it's your podcast name, but
Ah,
but
That's why
I
we
love
named
it
it that.
because obviously I know I love tying in, and it's been something I've been doing for a gajillion years, it feels like. And I was like, obviously I was a proponent of it. Like I was like saying it should be the first question that we ask when we go to a location.
Hmm.
We tie in, we have a clean grid, and
You're,
this
you're
is
talking about the power kiosk, just so for listeners,
not
or
only the power
okay.
kiosk, but where you can tie in. We have another mapping program at Creative BC where you can show where you can tie into right into the
Okay.
building.
mhm.
Okay.
And so that was a program that I thought was really a great sales pitch to the world in the sense that if you could collect this data and you knew it and you had it as a production center, we're mature enough and we've had enough time to figure these things out that if you can find the hot spots where people are going, where they're filming, where they're tying in, and clock it, you're going to be able to share that, and it becomes instant adoption. It's very, very simple. And other people have taken that idea and turned it into their own thing, and it's been wonderful. Like we see it in London, we see it in New York, they're doing
Yeah.
it in other jurisdictions, right? So those are things that I think that are becoming more, that's the road to efficiency. And that's a place where British Columbia, I think our community
Hmm.
is really at the forefront. I hope we don't stop doing that because I do think we
Yeah.
have more to learn and more to offer. But I do think that those types of efficiencies come only when you've been doing it, trying and trying and trying again,
Yeah.
Which I'm stating that something that's obvious, but you can't just do it once. You can't just do it twice. You have to do it 20 times and know that you can do it authoritatively. And then the efficiencies start becoming a part of the language, right? They're part of in BC now. I think the tie-in is part of the vernacular of how
Hmm.
Yeah.
we go on location scouts. So yeah, I don't know. I don't know if I answered the question, but
It's
Yeah.
an ambiguous question.
yeah.
Yeah. Well, what I've heard you say a few times is, at least I'm interpreting it this way, is that there is a collective action element to this. There's a community element to this, even in building the tie-in database and website. We had multiple people, crew contributing to this. And can you just for people out there in jurisdictions that don't quite have that cohesiveness or whatever, how has that mattered to you as a filmmaker?
Well, it's critical, and if we don't have it, then you can't make films on your own. I don't think that anyone, whether it's a small independent, shooting something on your iPhone or whatever, you need other people all the time. You need performers. You need someone who can edit if you can't edit. You need, whatever it is. So we're like the best collaborators. We're like an industry full of professional collaborators. And I think that's what we've gained out of the British Columbia scene is we have a very um, we have a very tight group of people that like each other, that want to work together to do things. And we don't actually need a lot of support. It's amazing to me because the things that we can do in BC, we've done without a lot of government support or involvement. Obviously, Creative BC becomes the house that we all kind of, check in with, and Real Green and that program has been super instrumental. But we were doing things outside of that before Real Green, and I think that's just the nature of how that community's evolved and that production center's evolved. I don't know that other cities have it the same way. Like they do, but it's almost like it's mandated, or it comes from government, or it's, some municipal person will be an agent for doing it. And we've just kind of organically developed that community. And I think it's critical. And like I said, you can't make films on your own. You need a team. That's just how we
Mhm.
are.
Hmm.
That's part of the reason why people come into the business, is because they like people, you know?
And they
Yeah.
reference each other. What I always loved about film compared to some of the other industries that I was towing into as I was doing portable electric, is that is highly referential, right? So someone could get a text message from someone doing something in London literally
Yeah.
the next day, or in LA, in Vancouver, right? So it's really a beautiful community in that sense. It's global,
Yeah.
versus, let's say, construction or other industries tend to be regional, and it's a
Yeah.
lot harder to influence from one region to another. And I
Yeah.
thought that was a really, really powerful. And I would use that in my sort of my pitches about why film, because not the hugest industry or not the hugest market when it comes to production, but really beautifully references. I mean, we talked to some folks in Hungary,
Yeah.
right? Green Eyes, and I mean, we're talking the same language.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
I think that once you like, I've been lucky enough in my film career that I've worked with people from all over the world. And I think that once I made that connection, that I'm like, I'm not part of a regional community.
Hmm.
I'm part of an international, to your point, to your exact words, global community. And that's filmmakers. We're a
Yeah.
strange, odd bunch of folks all over the world, but we speak the same. I can meet someone. I'm working with a DP from Denmark right now, and I connect with them. Like, we just speak the
Hmm.
same language. We think the same way. We just don't have, there's not a lot of building of the relationship. We were instantly just linked because we speak the same vernacular. The gypsy carny vernacular that we have. And we were born into it for whatever reason. Now we're here and we're doing it. So for me to, for example, say to him, I said right off the top, I said, I like the use of batteries. I'm going to be pushing. We're going to carry a ton of batteries. And I said, and I hope you're on board with that, because I've had DPs that weren't so keen
Hmm.
on it, hadn't tried it out. And he laid into me. He was like, global warming, and he's got kids, and he's just right in there. He goes, so we're going to do all of that. We're going to do everything that you're saying. I'm like, okay, great. So I had a partner within 12 minutes of meeting this guy, to try these types of things out. And it's been remarkable here because we're lighting up. We are lighting up in such distances and in outside in the natural world, and we would not have been able to do this with cable. We had to have batteries to be able to light it the way that we're lighting it. So it's become now just not a practical or production tool. It's become a creative. Like, now he's been able to stretch himself creatively to light differently because he has the mobility from the batteries, which is amazing.
Yeah. And
Beautiful.
I love that within 12 minutes, or like one of the first things you said to him is that you want to use batteries, like boom, off the top, and turn
Oh yeah.
instead of like waiting, a few weeks and maybe we'll do it and all that. I love it.
No, I said,
Hmm.
Hey, how are you? What kind of cameras you want?" Alexa's okay, great. Let's talk about that. The lenses and da 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 da. And about 10 minutes in, I was like, "Oh, and by the way, I'm a big battery guy, so we like batteries, and we're not going to be cabling for days and things like that." And he laid into me, and once he heard that, he was right on board. And he said to me a number of times, he's like, the fact that we had this facility with the batteries, and that we had suppliers that were partnered with us, and that the electricians had comfort with
Hmm.
equipment. I mean, they've also expressed to me how much easier their life has been because
Wow.
they're not cabling in the cold, or in the heat for that matter, for hours and hours and hours being outside of laying this stuff down. They're just able to pull up, drop the battery, run a little cable, and put a light up. And I think
Yeah.
it's been a real, yeah, it's been great.
That's
Yeah.
amazing, Hans.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's really beautifully said.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I can't help but think that you are fostering a sort of crew well-being
Yeah.
element as well, right? Like I I don't know. I mean, I hear a lot of people talk about, how difficult things are and how aspects of the job are difficult. They don't like seeing this or that or whatever. I mean, you've mentioned a couple things, but I feel like what I'm hearing is that by talking about this stuff and engaging the DP right away and whatnot, you've like it's been kind of this trickle down type well-being element and camaraderie
Yeah.
and whatnot that you're fostering.
Yeah. And it happens, I find it happens in two ways, actually. It happens in one way that you give them a purpose that, because everybody's, I think human nature is such that people want to be better. They
Mm,
want to do better. They want to do their jobs better. And so this is an avenue for them to express that pursuit, like to chase it. To be better means to be more responsible. So I'm saying it to them, I'm appealing to their sense of bettering themselves in that way, which I think is to your point about wellness and kind of their mental health. But also, I find when I say to them, don't wait, you don't want to waste, I don't have to go far in saying to someone, I don't want you sucking on those fumes. I don't want you, I have a I have a running joke with my team about the volume of sugar that we consume, for example, on a show with our food. And I'm always fighting against having sugar, sweets on the set. And all my food folks, the catering and crafty and people in the office, they always have a good chuckle with me because they know that I'm like anti-sugar. And I'm not buying, because I say to them all the time, I'm like, I'm not buying something that's going to give you cancer or diabetes. I don't want to do it. And we get into these great things. Well, people love chocolate. They want to have their chocolate. They want to have this. And I said, well, I'm not buying fuel that's going to spew exhaust fumes into your lungs either. Like it's the same thing that I'm saying. I'm like, I'm not gonna allow the caterers to just have beef every day because it's not good for you. I want vegetables. I want other healthier foods and food items on the tables so that your health is just not about being able to earn a paycheck or whatever. It's about when you come to work, you've got the right resources and support so that you're living healthy all round. Like there's an opportunity to be healthy all round here. And
Hmm.
people love that. They loved ribbing me about the sugar side of it. But on the flip side, when I start to say to them, I don't want you sucking on fumes, they're like, we don't want to be sucking on fumes either. So this is great. I say to them, we don't want to consume beef like this because we know that it's bad in the way that it gets here, but it's also something that's not necessarily the best thing for you to be eating on a regular basis. So we're going to trim
Yeah.
down and eat a little healthier. And when they hear that you care about them that way, I'll tell you, not only is their health better over the course of like, I'm on 120 days of shooting here,
Whoa.
their health is better over the course of that. Their mental health is better as a course of all the other things they get to do. But their willingness to work and their productivity and like really selfishly, they're still working at 100%. Like they've been able to sustain 120 days of filming and still be okay.
Yeah.
So I think it's all round. And I wish unions, and I'm a part of a union, so I try to talk about this at the union level and say this should be something that we're asking for from our
Yeah.
employers. Like support us, not just financially, but support us in a healthy workplace. And you can be healthy in two or three different ways.
So the
Anyway,
role of unions has a big role in this. I mean,
absolutely.
and are you seeing the union here in the West Coast of Canada, but also are you seeing this starting to happen at union level, or is this more just you're sort of starting to get that
I
conversation
mean, if
going?
you were going to ask me, like what I'm hoping for in the next couple of years or few
Yeah.
years, I mean, I think that that's something that we want to put on the table. I
Hmm.
would be pushing the unions to put this on the table and make it a point to negotiate this into contracts that we want you to foster a healthy workplace. I mean, medical leave and things like that, we're just getting. So it's
Yeah.
like we're so behind in some of those things. So I'd love to see it be something that's negotiated as a contractual thing. But beyond that, I'd love for governments to sort of say to us, well, if you can measure your carbon, or if you
Yeah.
can measure your way, if you can gauge some of this in some official capacity, audit it, well, we're going to give you a break too, and we're going to help
Yeah.
support your pursuit. That's another place where we can encourage our unions to go and lobby and talk about it with the governments and
Yeah.
say, you don't just have to give us a
That's their
blank.
job.
Yeah, you don't have to just give us a blanket incentive to make films, because that's what happens in every region. You can
Mhm.
give us an incentive that's attached to something that's going to make our lives better, which is, being in a healthy workplace.
It's a
Hmm.
differentiator too, right? I mean, in terms of the filming region.
Yeah.
Yeah. One of the kind of bigger questions I ask myself, as I, think about, this sort of larger scope of the industry and whatnot is, um, it's one thing to say, kind of in a throwaway kind of fashion, like we want a thriving industry, but it's another thing to really dive into what actually makes a thriving industry. And is our industry really thriving? Is it healthy? Is it, wonderfully functional and resilient? These are kind of bigger, questions to ask and ponder and seek out.
Yeah.
But I'm curious kind of what you think about that. Are those
Well, I think, I mean, obviously I have opinions on a lot of things, but
I know.
I think that when you say thriving, I think there's two different words you use there, thriving and resilient. I
Uh-huh.
think both qualities and qualifications that apply to film people. I've said this in government, and I've said this to leadership before. I don't know if there's any group of people that you will find that work harder than film people, in my mind. Nobody shows up for a 12-hour shift without complaint and just accepts it as a normal course of how they're going to work in any other business, maybe in medicine or in things that are really, monumentally important like that. But I know that they also work 3 days and then they're off for four. In healthcare, it's a different system. In our business, it's 5 days a week, 12 hours a day,
In the
hauling
rain.
in the rain, in the snow, hauling, lifting, moving in conditions that they're not consistent. You're not working in a factory line, or you're not working in an office that's consistently the same day in, day out. Every circumstance, every day is a new challenge, and you're adapting, and your brain's adapting, and your feet are adapting, and your ankles are adapting. And so, uh, when you say resilient, to me, you will not find a more resilient group of people in a regular way. Now, the global industry is changing quite a lot. It's shrinking, as we know.
Mhm.
There's lots going on. So, will people weather the storm, and will they be able to thrive? To your point about thriving, maybe not in their life, and if they're committed to the business, then they're going to stick around and tough it out, because they are resilient people, and they'll stick it out and we'll get through it. Now, are they thriving in the micro sense of, like, when they're at work? Are they able to flourish? Are they able to express themselves? That's a part of it where I'm trying to figure it out. That's another little quest or hope for me, is to find a way. Can we make a film and not be miserable making a film? Because I'll tell you, we hear a lot of complaining over the course of a show.
Mhm.
And I wonder, that's not thriving to me when you're just stuck in the complaint place. So I don't know if it's management training. I don't know if it's having a greater purpose. For me, I'm definitely thriving, and I could be not very wealthy or not very whatever, or not. I may never succeed at doing a good show ever again or anything like that. But I know for me personally, I've been thriving because I've had the opportunity to pursue some of these things around sustainable practice, be able to experiment, be able to engage people in it. Like, the social aspect of it for me has been enormous, because I'm able to engage with young people, old people, and try to convince them of it. And it becomes a side passion to the pursuit of the show, like to what the show is supposed to be. But it keeps me kind of going, and it's great fodder and energy, right? For me personally. So emotionally, I'm like right on top of it and feel right empowered by the whole mission. Um, but I don't know if that applies to everybody, and how I've seen it with people when they latch on to something. I've watched it with a number of electricians in Vancouver. They've latched onto these things, and it's like it's become their kind of reason for being. And
Sure.
I'm so happy for them that they're doing it, because that's thriving. You know what I mean? That's really
Yep.
thriving. I don't know if it's collective thriving. I think in BC we've got all the same challenges, and we're going to try and change things, or even in Canada, we're going to try and change things. and push it as far as we can, as far as sustainable work in filmmaking. But and I don't know if we're going to thrive in it, but I think that we have a lot of opportunity that a lot of places don't have. And so I'm going to just keep pushing through and fighting for it, you know?
Oh, I love it. Very inspiring words. I mean, you've got Zena and I here, super excited and very aligned.
Yeah,
It's not an easy task, that's for sure. And we know there's a lot of stuff going on in the industry, but I think I love your attitude and I love your leadership. And so I think it's going to go a long way. And I hope that folks listen to this podcast and take that. And I really appreciate your work.
yeah,
We're Our last question. I don't know if you've listened to the podcast much, but we love to ask our guests, if you were to create a playbook, like, with the guiding principles for the
yeah.
industry, about sustainability and entertainment, what would be first on your list, or what top three, or yeah, any comments on that?
Well, the playbook for me is I think there's two guiding principles, and it's got to be pretty broad and not very granular. One is find your opportunity, like find your opportunity with wherever you're at. Sometimes it's about measuring, sometimes like measuring carbon, I think is our number one key thing. If you don't know where you're going or where you're starting, how can you make improvements and how can you challenge yourself or whatever it is? So finding the opportunity or the place where I can do that the most on a show, that's the key, the start of it. And then from that point, I think getting the gateway drug is like finding the one thing that are going to latch on to. And if they get excited about it, it can change the way that it extends everywhere. Um, when it's food, food is a great one because everybody loves to eat. And so when
Yeah.
you start talking about food and about sustainability and about, we did a show a couple years ago where we were growing herbs we had a micro herb garden in our boardroom actually. And the caterers and the craft service people would come up and take the herbs from this micro herb garden and bring them back to their kitchen trailers and make and put them in the sandwiches and put them in everything. And so you tell people it's like you're eating a sandwich and it's got like micro herbs that are microgreens in it, and it's highly concentrated alfalfa with lots of chlorophyll and lots of iron and all this sort of stuff. And people were just like, "Oh, you're feeding me healthy food." And we said, we're not only feeding it to you, we're growing it upstairs. So go have a look. And people would come and take a look at the little micro farm that we had. And, like, so finding people in that way with food, for example, or finding that little gateway of getting them
Mhm.
excited about it, it made everyone. I used to watch the waste that we had at the end of that show. I mean, we probably did one or two dumpster dumps at the end of the show because people had become so mindful of waste and thinking about things. And it all started with like food. It was just
Yeah.
food that got them in that mindset. So here I've converted, oil and gas driving tech Teamsters to adopt renewable diesel. And some of them have said to me, it's like, "Oh, my truck's running real efficient." And I'm like, "Well, there you go. You made the leap. So now you're not going to look back." And he's like, "Where are we going to get this stuff? Because it's not readily found." And I'm like, "Yeah, I know it's not easy to get this stuff in Alberta, but it's going to come. It's coming."
You need UFA card lock to get
Yeah.
in on it or something like that.
Yeah. Yeah. So anyways, I guess my point is I think that the playbook is meet people where they're at, meet
Mhm.
them in their terms, in their world, and then tailor your strategy of whatever the gateway drug is to what the show is or what the project is. And if it's short term, then it changes the way that you do things. Maybe it is just batteries, maybe it is just pushing tie-ins, maybe it's just things like that, try to get out of burning it. Let's see if we can get away with not burning any fuel for the next 3 weeks, you know.
Yeah.
Um, that's kind of it. There's no master plan. I think it's just being aware is certainly helpful. And I think being able to understand measuring it, that's the key thing
Yeah.
is understanding how to measure carbon and how it takes place. That's a big one. So yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Amazing. Thank you
Wonderful.
very much.
Thank you. That's
This
great.
has been really fun. I'm super excited about this conversation and you're
Hmm.
just inspired me to keep going
Let's
today.
keep
So
Yeah,
going.
and it
We're
really
just getting
ties
started.
in a lot of the conversations that we've had over the past few months too.
Oh, that's great. I'm glad. And I will
yeah.
listen more. I've just been so slammed on this show. It's like crazy. It's
No,
crazy.
it's good.
Like and
All good.
share.
Yeah. I can share. We'll do.
All right, very good, Hans. Thank
Okay.
you.
Thank
Thank
you,
Really.
you.
Hans.
Thank you both. Keep it up. Please keep going.
All right. Yeah, you too.
Thanks.
Okay.
Okay, take
All
care.
right.
Okay, see you later.
Bye.
Bye. Ah,
Yeah,
amazing. Don't you
he
just
just
love
said the
talking to him?
words. Yeah,
He's
he said the words that is so simple and beautiful. And um, yeah, I just think the industry, the film industry, is a place for innovators, right?
yeah, clearly. I mean, I think what you're right. Like the simplicity of it,
Hmm.
just keep trying, doing, meeting people where they are, even if
Yep.
it's, around one thing like food he mentioned and like kind of that gateway piece. Like there are so many cool ways, cool entry points. And I, but the thing I think is that's most important is the trying, right? If
Yeah.
you don't even
Yeah.
try, and not just once, but multiple times, he said, then it's never going to happen.
Yeah. Of all the industries, the film is the most perfect industry to try things over and over again. You have a different crew, right? He talked about that. It's a different production, and you can try it again, and you can try it again, but you need the buy-in, right, from the studios. It sounds like Netflix is really in on it. That was so cool to hear about that. Yeah, he said so beautifully the words that sum up a lot of the work that we've done in the past few months on this podcast.
100%, 100%, and kind of validates, some thinking that, you and I have both,
Hmm.
had and talked about ourselves. So,
Yeah.
it's such a gift to be able to talk with him and hear his thoughts, his perspective. Even in, challenging situations that he's had and whatnot, like he seems to bring out the best in people. And I think that goes a long way.
Mm.
Um, like he said, productivity and whatnot, but like you can probably see it through on the screen. I bet that DP that
Yeah.
he talked about is probably going
Yeah.
to make a really excellent show, right?
Yeah. I want to be on his crew.
I know, right? He really seems to take care of people.
Yeah.
So, anyway,
Awesome.
great
Great.
inspiration.
Yep. Well, thanks for listening, everybody, and check us out, www.tieinpodcast.com, and you can find us on Spotify, iTunes, and YouTube.
Yeah, and do share this stuff with your friends, right?
Mhm.
Like we're a community here, right, of filmmakers and folks in live events and whatnot. We can learn from each other. So, if you're struggling somewhere out there and you think this is going to help you, get a message across, share it around with people.
Yeah. All right. Thanks, everybody.
Hello, entertainment industry. Something I've been working on over the past year with partners U.S. Green Building Council California and Aerith Environmental is the development of the Sustainable Production for Entertainment Certification, or SPEC, as we like to call it.
It's the first certification for the entertainment workforce, and it's now live for folks to sign up.
Yeah, go to the U.S. Green Building Council California website at usgbc-ca.org to learn more about it and to register for an upcoming class. This is a great way to up your sustainability game and gain a professional certification. So this is for you. See you in class. Our designer is Aaliyah Kane. Music is by Peter Chapman. Our producer is Colin Miller.